Hi, it's Mitch from PickDawgz.com. Sunday, June the 2nd, 2024, here with your first 5 innings in today's Major League Baseball action. We got no other sports to do the first halves of, so it's just first 5 innings. Of course, we also do Today in History, and today in sports history, Babe Ruth in 1935 announced his retirement. Oh man, he is a guy that changed the game and changed sports forever. So Bambino kisses baseball goodbye in 1935. I'll tell you what happened yesterday is we had our first losing day since starting these videos. It happens just like we had a sweep of the card last week on one of the days. Overall, the general trend is winning. So, it's part of sports betting. You don't have a losing day. Well, basically, you're not honest about your sports bets. But it happens. What we do is we always just keep showing up and bounce right back. And that's what we plan to do today as we knock it out of the park and crush the books in Major League Baseball action. Let's get to it. For the first game, we go to Houston, where the Astros are taking on the Twins. It's Hunter Brown on the bump for the Stros and Simeon Woods Richardson on the mound for the Twinkies. Hunter Brown got off to that horrible start to the season, but actually he's pitched pretty well in his last few starts. His ERA from 6.39 on the season down to 3.71. Woods Richardson is a guy who doesn't go very deep into games, so as a first 5-inning guy, well, he's actually about the guy that you're looking for. 2.70 ERA on the season. 1.80 over his last 3 starts. But when we look at, how the Twins are hitting the baseball over their last 10, versus righties, 243, while the Astros, 255 versus righties over their last 10. And for the season, it's not even close. The Astros, 259 versus righties, and the Twins, 219. Thing is, while the Astros took out some frustration yesterday, consistency, especially at home, has been something that has been lacking. And I think in this game, maybe these 2 pitchers get it done. We'll roll with the under in the first 5 of our first game for today. For our second game, we head to Boston to Fenway Park, where the Red Sox are taking on the Tigers. It's Casey Mize on the bump for the Tigers and Brian Bayo on the mound for the Red Sox. These are 2 guys that have spent some time on the injured list. Of course, Casey Mize returning from that injury, and Bayo as well. But Casey Mize, of course, missed a season and a half. Bayo missed a few games. Bayo has a 4.18 ERA, Mize at 4.71, but you go to their last 3 starts, both these guys have been bombed. 6.32 for Bayo, 8.25 for Mize. When we look at the way these guys are hitting right-handed pitching, it's actually the Red Sox over the last 10 that have done a little bit better at 241 to 231 for the Tigers, and same thing over the course of the season, 240 to 233. So these teams have actually been consistent with their season numbers when it comes to when it comes to hitting versus right-handers. And I just think that in this game, what we saw the Red Sox come out aggressive in all these games, swinging the bats. I think they do as well. I'm going to take the Red Sox as my pick for the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we head to Baltimore, where the Orioles are taking on the Rays. It's Cole Irvin on the bump for the O's and Zach Littell on the mound for the Rays. I think the thing about this one is that you look at Cole Irvin and his numbers and you say, boy, are these really sustainable for Cole Irvin? Because we've never seen anything in the past that makes him a 2.84 ERA pitcher and a 1.06 ERA over his last 3 starts. Meanwhile, Littell for the Rays, 3.47 for the season and a 4.58 ERA over his last 3 games. The most concerning stat of the bunch here is that with the Rays facing a lefty, they're hitting just 169 versus lefties over their last 10 games. They are hitting 241 versus lefties for the season, which is better for the season than they've hit righties, but as of late, they're just not hitting anything. While the Orioles hitting 277 versus right-handed pitching over their last 10 games and 233 for the season. I've watched all of the games as I do every single day, and this one just looks one-sided. I'm going to take the O's for my pick in this one. For our next game, we head to Atlanta, where the Braves are taking on the A's. Big upset yesterday as the A's pulled it off against Chris Sale, of all people, and they resume action today in Atlanta with Charlie Morton on the bump for the A's. It's Luis Medina on the mound for the A's. Medina hasn't pitched in the majors this season, but we saw plenty of him last year, and we saw plenty of him getting hit around pretty hard last year when he had a 5.23 ERA. I'll tell you, he's been getting hit around as well as Charlie Morton, 4.29 ERA on the season and 7.90 over his last 3 starts. Morton is traditionally a very slow starter, and so he's definitely a second half of the season guy, as are a lot of the Braves pitchers and a lot of the Braves players. Remember the year they won the World Series a couple of years ago? They were terrible at the All-Star break, and guys like Max Fried had ERA approaching 6. The thing is that the Braves likely bounce back here against Medina. The thing is, I think the A's are going to get some shots in here against Morton. I like the over first 5 in the A's Braves as my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to Toronto, where the Blue Jays are taking on the Pirates. It's Chris Bassett on the bump for the Jays and Quinn Priester on the mound for the Pirates. Priester, certainly has top of the rotation stuff, but he's one of these young pitchers that the Pirates have, Skeens, Priester. And the thing is that, with Priester going here, we haven't really seen that top end stuff like we've seen from Skeens, but even though we know it's there, the Pirates are great at drafting pitchers. Garrett Cole, Tyler Glass now. It kind of goes on and on about guys that they've had and have let slip away. But Bassett, he's always hit and miss, and he's been hitting lately with a 1.53 ERA over his last 3 starts. The Pirates hitting just .219 versus righties over their last 10, and that's .219 for the season as well. While the Blue Jays picking it up, .247 versus right-handed pitching. And I think they get to Priester here. I think that it runs a little bit chalky, but sometimes that's just the way it is. I'm going to take the Blue Jays in the first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we go to Cleveland, where the Guardians are taking on the Nationals. It's Carlos Carrasco on the mound for the Guardians and Jake Irvin on the mound for the Nationals. We've seen Irvin with really high-end stuff when he shut out the Dodgers at Dodger Stadium. We've seen some good stuff since then as well. His 3.43 ERA for the season, 3.12 over his last 3 starts. While Carlos Carrasco trying to have a nice comeback season, 5.16 ERA, but 3.00 over his last 3 starts. We know the veteran certainly can get it done. The Guardians are just absolutely red hot right now, 8-2 in their last 10 games straight up, while the Nats are 5-5, and the Guardians are hitting right-handed pitching much better than they have been for the season, hitting .253 over their last 10 games compared to .229 versus righties over the course of the season, while the Nats at .228, slightly up from their .225 for the season. Just think in this particular matchup, probably a good shot to go for the odds. I don't know who wins the game outright, but I'll go with the Nats in the first 5. In our next game, we head to Citi Field in New York, where the Mets are hosting the Diamondbacks. We have 2 pitchers who have been improving over their last few starts, but still have some wood to chop as far as that goes, as Brandon Pfaadt on the mound for the D-backs, his 4.16 ERA looks like a 3.15 over his last 3 starts, while Jose Quintana's 5.06 looks like 4.15. So it's a slight increase, certainly nothing to be overly alarmed about. But of course, the Diamondbacks for the season have crushed left-handed pitching, but over their last 10 games, that's dropped to just .220 from .274 for the season. Of course, the Mets facing the righty Pfaadt here have hit just .202 over their last 10 games versus righties and .234 for the season. Boy, if it was the other way around, the Mets really been crushing lefties, but they're kind of out of luck in this spot. And I think the Mets, while we've seen some fire from them recently, I think this is just a bad matchup with Quintana out there. I'm going to take the D-backs, and that's going to be my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to Miami, where the Marlins are taking on the Rangers. It's Trevor Rogers on the bump for the Marlins, and it's Andrew Heaney on the mound for the Rangers. Second time in 3 days that the Rangers have pulled out an old Marlins pitcher to throw against them, and well, we'll see if Heaney has any better luck. But for the season, he's got a 4.47 ERA that looks like 5.25 over his last 3 starts, while Trevor Rogers, the former Rookie of the Year, horrible record on the season, but 5.65 ERA, down to 3.21 over his last 3 starts. He's actually pitched pretty well over that span. The Rangers hitting lefties slightly better than they're hitting righties over their last 10 games, down to at .227, and the Marlins absolutely crushing lefties at .267. They're hitting righties at .259. I think the Marlins, after a slow day at the plate on Saturday, get the bats cranking early and often against Heaney. I like the Marlins first 5 as my pick for this one. For our next game, we head to Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City, where the Royals are taking on the Padres. Cole Reagan's on the bump for the Royals, and it's Michael King on the mound for the Padres. We look at this line from a perspective of saying something looks funny here to me when you look at the full game line, with the Royals really not being a gigantic favorite with their top of the rotation pitcher going against Michael King, who's been a walking home run machine. And then you look and the Padres are hitting 283 versus lefties over their last 10 games, absolutely crushing left-handed pitching. And even though they're hitting just 222 for the season, but the Royals, they're hitting lefties really well. But the thing is, King's a righty, and they're hitting just 241 versus righties over their last 10, down from 243 for the season. This is one of these games, I'm going to tell you, something looks funny. And usually when something looks funny in the line, the books aren't lined up out there to give away money. I'm going to take a shot with the Padres, and that'll be my pick for the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we head to Milwaukee, where the Brewers are taking on the Chicago White Sox. Freddie Peralta on the mound for the Brewers and Nick Nastrini on the mound for the White Sox. Most people know I'm a White Sox fan, but I can say honestly, I have no idea how Nick Nastrini is in the major leagues. This guy is absolutely horrible, checking in with a 9.92 ERA and 12.71 over his last 3 starts. Freddie Peralta has been, not quite the same as he was earlier this season, but last time out he looked pretty good. He's got a 3.57 ERA over his last 3 starts. Of course, the Brewers are hitting the baseball pretty well, 280 versus righties over their last 10 games, while the White Sox hitting just 186 versus righties over their last 10 games. We've seen the Brewers in these afternoon spots before, and I think the way the White Sox are playing here, I think it's safe to say, I tried doing this yesterday with the Braves and it didn't work out so well, but we'll lay 2.5 with the Brewers, and that'll be my pick for the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we head to Chicago to Wrigley Field, where the Cubs are taking on the Reds. The only thing worse than having to sit out a rain delay is, sitting out a rain delay and losing, and that's exactly what happened to us on Saturday. That happens. It's all part of sports betting, all part of betting on baseball, but not the good part, that's for sure. The Cubs go with Ben Brown in this one. That means bullpen game, 2.72 ERA for the season, 1.15 over his last 3 starts. Pretty meaningless because he's only going to go an inning, maybe 2 at tops, and I'm going to say closer to an inning. Meanwhile, Lodolo for the Reds, 3.12 ERA on the season and 4.96 over his last 3 starts, which is certainly going in the wrong direction. But the thing that's also going in the wrong direction is the Cubs hitting against left-handed pitching, hitting just 185 over their last 10 games, down from 235 for the season. Cubs are taking their hacks in this game, but really their best hitting has come later in the games for the most part. I'm going to take the Reds in the first 5, and that's going to be my pick for this game. For the next game, we head to San Francisco, where the Giants are taking on the Yankees. It's Blake Snell on the mound for the Giants, Nestor Cortez Jr. on the mound for the Yankees. The Yankees have absolutely dominated in this series, and the series that really San Francisco looked to have a pretty good chance on paper coming in, especially with the pitching matchups that they had, but they have had no luck at all except for bad luck. The Yankees, in fact, have won 8 of the last 9 meetings at this point now against the Giants. Blake Snell on the bump for the Giants, 10.42 ERA on the season for last year's Cy Young Award winner, and a 9.00 over his last 3 starts. Meanwhile, Nestor Cortez Jr. on fire with a 3.30 ERA on the season and 1.04 for his last 10 games. The Giants are hitting lefties, though, at 212, which over their last 10 doesn't get it done. 246 for the season, while the Yankees hitting lefties at just 188 over their last 10 games. I don't know if Blake Snell goes that far into this game, but it's not going to matter. I'll take the Yankees first 5 as my pick for this game. For our next game, we head to LA, where the Dodgers are taking on the Rockies. It's Gavin Stone on the bump for the Dodgers and Austin Gomber on the mound for the Rockies. The thing is that the Dodgers got out of trouble early in that game on Saturday night and were able to ride that all the way home to get a win in that game. It could have been over early as the Rockies had runners on base and were unable to convert. Gavin Stone's been pretty solid here for the Dodgers, 3.16 ERA on the season and 2.37 ERA over his last 3 starts, while Austin Gomber having the best start to his career, 2.76 ERA on the season and 0.87 versus his last 3 games. He's going to be tested today because the Dodgers are hitting 267 versus lefties over the last 10 games and 270 for the season. The Rockies hitting righties pretty well as well, 247 over their last 10 and 244 for the season. I think that both these pitchers are pretty good. I think both these teams are hitting the baseball. I'm going to take the shot here with the Rockies over the first 5, and that'll be my pick for this one. For our next game, we head to Seattle, where the Mariners are taking on the Angels. The Mariners have been an amazing home team, going 16-5 straight up in their last 21 at home. They go with Luis Castillo on the mound for this one, up against Griffin Canning for the Angels. Canning, of course, had that horrible start to the season, but he's really picked it up of late. He's got a 3.38 over his last 3 starts, while Castillo, 3.28 for the season and 3.18 for his last 3. But the thing is, Castillo still doesn't look right. I mean, his numbers are generally a little better than these, especially walks, strikeouts, and all those sort of important numbers for pitchers. We look at the way the Mariners are hitting right-handed pitching, just 183. The Angels at 197. And while the Mariners seem to get the best of this series, the Angels over the course of the season have hit righties better from start to finish, really, at 229 to 220. I just think that this is probably a good shot, good value here on Canning, who's pitched pretty decently. I'm going to take the Angels first 5 as my pick for this game. For our final game of the night, we go to Philadelphia, where the Phillies are taking on the Cardinals on Sunday Night Baseball. It's Taijuan Walker on the bump for the Phillies, and it's Lance Lynn on the mound for the Cardinals. Walker, generally a very fast starter and a slow finisher to the season, absolutely starting as slow as we've ever seen him this season, with a 5.51 ERA, ballooning to 6.43 over his last 3 starts, while Lynn at 3.45 for the season, down to 2.65 over his last 3. The difference for Lance Lynn has been this guy always seems to have runners on base. This year, stranding runners again, like he did formerly in his career with the Cardinals when he went out and pitched for these other teams. Seemed like a lot more of those runners crossed the plate. Look at the way the Cardinals are hitting right-handed pitching, 251 over their last 10 games and 240 for the season, while the Phillies hitting righties at just 220 over their last 10, but 246 for the season. I think the Phillies get those runs across the plate. I think the Cardinals do too. I like the over first 5 in the Phillies-Cardinals as my pick for this game. That wraps up today's first 5 inning picks. Tomorrow, just 8 games on the Major League Baseball card, and the NBA Finals don't resume till Thursday. So, of course, we'll have the first half of Game 1 of that as well we'll have first halves when the fall rolls around for NFL football, including preseason and all that other good stuff. Of course, if you're looking for my best bets and best bets from the world's best handicappers, just go to PickDawgz.com, click on the Premium Picks tab, and use that discount code PICK for 15% off. We also have a link in the description for that. And we also have a link for PickDawgz merch, which you can also get at the website under the merch tab. Stuff like I'm wearing, like this zip up, like this hat, and tons of cool Nike gear. Not the cheapest products out there, but I'll tell you what, certainly the best quality. Check them all out. And of course, check us out every day here for your first 5 innings and first half picks, as well as tons of videos at the most watched sports betting YouTube channel, PickDawgz.